DYSMANTLE came out in 2021, took me over 40 hours to finish, and it turned out to be the best indie open world game ever. I mean, for the most part, this is the game. In general, you break stuff, gather materials, upgrade, and craft whatever you want to survive and get off this island. The weirdest compliment I can give this mantle is that it's not revolutionary, nor does it do anything experimental. But what it does very well. Different elements of the game, like gameplay, story, visuals, and music, all come together so incredibly well if you keep in mind that the world and game is made by an indie company, not 300 developers sweating and bleeding for 3 years. It's also rare to find an open world game that allows progression in different ways. Obviously, you shouldn't compare it to huge AAA games like Elden Ring, Breath of the Wild, Cyberpunk, or Garfield Kart. This video will be very long, and I'm going into a lot of details, but even then, I can't go into all of it, but I think that's fine, because what I want from you is to actually try the game out and see for yourself. If you stick around, I will bring you on my journey through this mantle, hopefully show and explain to you why it was so magical to play and why it stuck with me for over a year now. Now, when I started a new game, I got an automated message from K23, the Crown Station.
This is an automated recording sent from K23, the Crown Station. Everyone will be provided a safe transit as soon as possible.
If you are wondering, yes, that is Brian, a very common text-to-speech voice used on Twitch.
This is an automated recording sent from K23, the Crown Station.
It's a bit corny at first, but you'll see why the text-to-speech voice makes sense as we approach the finale of the game. After the K23 message, there was real voice acting.
I have no idea what awaits me at the surface, but I can't stay here.
It gave a quick introduction of who I'm playing as, that I ran out of food in my bunker, that society was broken, and that I needed to find the evacuation site to the east to escape this island. A very simple objective, and reminds me a bit of Breath of the Wild, which had one big quest: beat Ganon. PS, don't get hit by lightning. Out of the bunker, I did the gamer thing and just smashed every button and object. You may notice that the game has damage numbers, which I don't mind too much, if done well. There is more to the damage numbers, which I'll explain in a bit. Oh my god, a campfire! The campfire is a safe zone for resting, crafting, and equipping items. Thankfully, the devs thought ahead and added a massive quality of life improvement, which pulls all the items from your backpack or the bar at the bottom into the chest automatically the moment you rest at a campfire. You can also just interact with the stash if you don't want to rest. Thanks to this, after my 40 hours with this game, I didn't need to call my doctor about my developing carpal tunnel syndrome. That's pretty cool, I think. After I went through the house, I found a radio which had the text-to-speech voice from earlier. Each radio transmission gave short story bits and built out the world. For your viewing or listening pleasure and saving me dozens of hours of editing, I won't show or even talk about the radio transmissions. It also gives you a reason to play the game yourself. I mean, that is the real reason. Ignore what I said before. Outside the house, I found the first enemy, an ex-human scrapper. The game doesn't tiptoe around the fact that I will be killing humans, or ex-humans. This intrigued me a bit right from the start and added more mystery to solve, because why do humans look like zombies now? In a AAA game, this would have been a 3-minute cutscene with voice acting, but because I see it with my own eyes in about 2 microseconds that it's a zombie-like creature, There is no reason for that in this game. It also allowed me to quickly go back to gameplay and whack the enemy. I explored some more, rested at the campfire, and... wait, the enemy's back. Oh no. Jokes aside, this was totally fine that enemies respawn, like in most Souls-like games. I then wandered aimlessly through the town, whacked stuff and gathered quite a lot of materials in just a few minutes. Furniture and fences broke into wooden scraps, mugs and toilets became ceramic. Speaking of materials, I got XP or experience for each material I stashed. The higher the tier of the material, the more XP I got. With enough XP, I got a level up and was able to choose a passive skill. Passive skills vary from having more health to holding more items to fishing faster and a bunch of other stuff. At the start, I went with the pack rat option so I have one more material slot and hold more items. Because even just a few minutes in, my inventory, the bar at the bottom, was constantly full. You could say my inventory felt very inflated.
Oh my god!
In the middle of the road, I found a link tower. Seriously, quick question. Who the F builds a massive tower in the middle of a road? I activated the link tower and revealed the map. I know this is probably boring to some because no one in their right mind is thinking, yay, Ubisoft towers. But I like it when these towers are impactful. For example, Horizon Zero Dawn implemented towers very well into its world by making the tower a robotic creature. In Dismantle, when I unlocked the tower, it showed the area I was in, other towers around me, and later on gave me the option to manipulate enemies. Then I reached level 3. With a higher level, more options on the crafting tree were unlocked. The crafting tree splits into 4 directions. Going clockwise, there is outfits, tools, supplies, and miscellaneous. Another gameplay mechanic that I really enjoyed was cooking. And I'm not talking about the type of cooking I do, which is bread, butter, sliced meat, and cheese. At stoves that I found in houses or after I crafted a cooking station, I could throw some ingredients together. With the right ingredients that I gathered while exploring, I gained permanent character upgrades. They are minor upgrades, like a bit of health or a tiny bit of crit chance, but over time they mattered. I could only cook stuff for which I had a recipe for, which I got by exploring the town, and soon the entire world. To skip ahead quite a bit, the boss fight in the starting town that I had spent over an hour in was approaching. I was a bit afraid of the boss because he looked like the main character in an age anime. Brr, getting goosebumps here. So the boss wasn't too tough, but I could see players who don't play a bunch of games get stuck here. I tried this boss in a new save file again and also beat him first try. But I did die twice against the ex-human hurlers. They are brutal. Now, with the boss defeated, I stashed this mana thing, opened the gate, and left the town. Wait, was that the tutorial? I just love this scene. This was the point where I knew the game was special. No bombastic cutscenes or long drawn-out dialogue between multiple people, just a clear focus on gameplay first, getting the player to actually play the game quickly, making the player learn the core game mechanics, followed by a quest to leave the town, and thus overcoming a challenge. Afterwards, the player is not only rewarded with an amazing song and this scene, but also gameplay-wise by being able to leave the town, and I was now free to explore everything. Yes, you heard right, everything. The game is now a true open world about an hour into the game. Could have also been 10 minutes if I didn't break 100 fences and hoarded leaves. Seriously, what is wrong with me? After this scene, I arrived at the evacuation site to the east, and thus I was close to the end of the game. Anyhow, I run around, found a tank station, bonked a doggo, and crafted myself the sickle. It's a decent weapon to break objects, but for me it was less useful in combat due to its low damage. I also found a loot box. To open it, I take out my wallet and type in the bank account numbers. Okay, I'm joking, but here's my challenge to you if you play this game. Can you figure it out before you reach the 20-hour mark in your playthrough? Yes, it took me 20 hours to figure out how to open these boxes that have a timer on it. Leave me alone. Something else that gave a lot of materials and sometimes even higher materials were certain digging spots in the world which needed a shovel. There was one spot and a small side quest in the starting town, but there are many more spots in the world, so keep your eyes open during this video. Maybe you can see some spots that I missed. Moving on and totally going off rails, I left the evacuation site and found myself at a farm. I planted vegetables, which I thought I would need for recipes later, or maybe something else that may require me to have 100 tomatoes for no specific reason whatsoever. Farming is the slowest part of the game, and after some hours into my playthrough, I did find out that I could have sped it up by sleeping at the campfire with my sleeping bag. Now, the sleeping bag itself is great because it gave me a small temporary boost to my health, but I was only able to sleep when I was tired, which the game never told me. I then went back to the evacuation site, totally didn't try to fight a new big enemy called the ex-human stalker. Anyhow, let's skip that one for now. Following the road past the farm, I know I'm ping-ponging around here, don't worry about it. I found a new link tower. This revealed more locations, and the game also told me about the fast travel option. It was possible if I crafted a compass. I like that fast traveling had to be crafted and isn't something you just magically have. Upgrading a few things, I was ready to face the ex-human stalker again. Finally! The enemy dealt a lot of damage, was very tanky, and I think until the end of the game, I was never fully comfortable fighting it. Yes, there are many more of those, believe me. After getting the link tower at the evacuation site, I crafted the link tower toolkit, activated deadly transmission, which allowed me to kill monsters permanently. Not only could I stop monsters from respawning, but I also got mana beads from them, which are going to be necessary later on. Now, a thought that came to me was, the world will get very boring with no enemies around. But slight spoiler, there is an option later to ascend enemies in an area so they come back stronger than ever and can be killed again for more mana beads. Slowly getting the hang of things, I went to the evacuation site, which was, you know, the initial goal from the first minute, and I was about 3 hours in now. But I was blocked by a big gate and had to find 4 relay links scattered across the world to open it. Of course, you can't make it that easy for me, am I right, developers? I'm joking, by the way. At this point in my playthrough, I was still very scared exploring and fighting. I don't know why, because if I died, my items would drop to the ground, but I could pick them up again, like in Minecraft, so it didn't really matter. A good quality of life improvement was that items on the ground don't disappear, nor do they disappear after you close the game. After an hour wandering around, I crafted a new weapon. The machete. It does slashing damage, which mattered in the game because slashing and bonking damage are 2 different types. For example, tires needed to be slashed to get rubber, and toilets got bonked to get ceramic. After all that, I found a new town and a bunker. Oh god, the bunker. I get PTSD just from thinking of it. We'll get back to this in a bit. Jumping ahead some more, I crafted the common compressor, which compressed the basic materials so I could hold more of them in my backpack. As a hoarder, I greatly appreciated this. Now, after 2 gaming sessions, here is a quick recap of what has happened so far. I started the game in a small town, explored it, got used to the game mechanics, fought the town boss, and went out into the open world. Afterwards, I found a not-so-friendly doggo, planted veggies at the farm, fought the ex-human stalker, found out that I needed to activate the relay links to get to the evacuation site and crafted lots of trinkets, upgraded lots of items, and even cooked a few meals to get more powerful. In total, I had played 5 hours until now. So if you enjoyed what you saw so far, maybe buy the game and explore the rest of the world on your own. I can't say it enough, I highly recommend it. In this session I got a new weapon, found the graveyard, fixed a terminal that unlocked another part of the map, and I even fought the vicious twins. At the start of the session I was back at the town that I started in, and I unlocked the door with the lockpick I made previously. There was only one radio in there, and of course everything else that can be broken into materials, but some doors in the game hid recipes. Because I'm also not addicted to making numbers go higher, I leveled up a lot and crafted my new weapon, the baseball bat. In the previous session I got the machete for slashing objects, and now I got a bonking weapon. Every time I crafted a new weapon, I went back to the original town and broke some stuff, or, at least tried to, because maybe I could break some more stuff now. This didn't work all the time, but someday I will destroy those cars. I know it. Not forgetting about my crops though, I went back and harvested my juicy vegetables on top of growing my small farm by using leaves. I did need a lot of leaves though, so having a few hundred in my stash wasn't a bad idea. Remember when I broke all the fences and leaves in the town at the start? That was a good use of my time. No, you will not change my mind on that. Going straight up from the farm, I found another town and encountered the vicious twins, which weren't vicious enough, I think. I just ran away and they left me alone. Kind of weird, but I was glad because I didn't feel ready facing 2 strong opponents at the same time yet. Something that I then fully upgraded was the sickle. It is one of the 2 weapons that hit multiple objects at the same time when you swing it. Well, that might not be 100% accurate, because there are 2 very strong weapons later on. More on that in about 6 sessions or maybe 25 minutes. I don't know how long this video will be. After the twins and me ruining a lot of houses, I found a very important part of the game, which was the graveyard. Technically, I found the graveyard in the second session, but I didn't really do anything with it. I just ran in there, got the quest, and I'm like, okay, cool, and then just ran out again. I usually couldn't focus on one thing at a time. This game just rips my attention apart. Now at the graveyard, I checked the quest again to find the key near a rock. It was really easy to find. Finding a trial behind the gate, the game told me to craft a rope and hook, which I did. This was a major item, or else I couldn't have done all the trials in the future. Now, with the rope and hook, I could go down on your mom and the first trial. Inside it, the trial, I activated the relay link and then solved it in about 2 seconds. It was really easy. It was very likely the first one a player would find, and as a reward, I got a blue eye orb, which I still had no idea what to do with, so I just threw it in my stash. Oh my god, Daniel is doing... Stop, Daniel. Stop breaking the fences, for the love of God. Moving on, I found a wishing well and threw some materials in to get some other materials out. It's kind of like an NPC that a player can use to trade items with. Soon after that, something big happened. By just whacking things, because it's Dismantle, you just whack stuff sometimes, I found out that I had enough damage to break utility poles and some basic pipes that stuck out of the ground, usually near the link towers. This gave me my first real source of steel, which was the next major material I needed for a bunch of items. I think this was the moment something clicked. The whole game is just finding old and new spots that you can use your weapons in and see if you can break new stuff. Probably obvious to some, but this made me want to explore more and figure out what I can do with an upgraded baseball bat. Remember a paragraph ago when I talked about the upgraded baseball bat? Yeah, screw that weapon, I got the axe now. Now I was dealing some serious damage against enemies and could easily murder trees. If you're wondering, murdering trees, what does that mean? Don't worry about it. It will make sense at the end of the game. You'll see. Having played a lot, I felt strong enough to go back and face the ex-human stalkers in the park. I didn't mention them before, totally not because I forgot or died to them, don't worry about it. Another thing I haven't mentioned too much until now were the ranged weapons. The knife and grenades were very useful in most fights in which you can prepare. For example, you can throw the mines, then lead the enemies into it and blast them into oblivion. With the brutes gone, I found a myth tablet. Myth tablets are scattered all over the world and give a glimpse into the past of the island and the people that came before. It is the go-to way to figure out what the world of DYSMANTLE is about. For your sake, so you understand the entire plot of the story, I will go into all the details in a later section of the video. Right next to the big slab of stone, there was a relay link, which is, by the way, very convenient. Well done, developers. It also reminded me, about the main quest that I totally didn't forget. I mean, technically it was the second main quest before the actual... Anyways, I activated the relay link, went back to the gate, and found a big-ass rocket. Oh no, the fuel cells are missing. Oh shucks, what a shame, and I thought I can finally leave this damn island. The game tells me where to find the 4 fuel cells that will power up the rocket. Of course, they are in the 4 corners of the map. Back when I was running around, I did get quite close to the one in the north, so I just teleported right there and found a corrective facility, also called prison. And no, not the horny prison, where all of you will go to. And yes, I will bonk every single one of you. To really get into the prison and to, apparently, the first fuel cell, the game told me to find a key in a nearby town from the guard, who was most likely dead. And this is some subtle storytelling, because this shows that people who lived nearby also worked at the facility, which just makes sense if you think about the small communities that lived on this island. Now with the key, I went back to the prison. Holy frick, a robot!
Kill it!
Phew, sweet baby Jesus, that was close. Hey, a fuel cell, yoink. I took it back to the rocket and pushed it into its fuel hole. Wait, can I say that on the internet? Jokes and memes aside, I have to come clean, guys. I can't tease you any longer. Here comes probably the worst part of DYSMANTLE for me, the tower defense minigame. I call them a minigame, they are probably not really a minigame. Either way, the tower defense part of the game that lets you get into the bunkers. Each bunker has a little tower thingy that needs to be protected, and the first time the player interacts with it, a central processing unit drops out. The CPU allowed me to craft a turret. More CPUs means more turrets. To get more CPUs, I needed to find more tower defense minigames in the world, which I didn't know. The balancing of these tower defense minigames felt a bit off, because this was probably not the first one I should have done. Why do I think this? Because I went a very weird way through this game, as you may realize soon. Either way, this was partially a fault on my side, but also the game design. If it's truly open world, balancing it so it's fun for every type of player becomes nearly impossible, I think. Now, at this point in my playthrough, I didn't know more about the tower defense minigame, and I really disliked it. Still, I really enjoyed the game so far, and the game being called DYSMANTLE, I thought that dismantling things will be the main part to winning this game. Even if bunkers have materials in them, I probably wouldn't need to do them. Right? I was very wrong. Now, for the end of this very long session, by the way 7 hours, I fixed the broken southern terminal that unlocked a whole part of the map, which I could now explore. Following the path through the forest and mowing my way through enemies with my trusty axe, I stumbled upon the lumber company that unlocked the sawmill. It finally allowed me to make lumber from all the wood that I have been hoarding. Gathering. Just some casual, light gathering of a few hundred wood. After getting a lot of lumber, I decided not to use it for upgrades, but to build a bridge and explore further. Finding a link tower and a bunch of dangerous enemies. Oh, explosive barrels. satisfying. It did take me a lot of time to explore everything, and there was even a secret area behind some hills. I won't tell you where, but I'm sure you'll find it yourself when you play the game. Having thrown in all my wood in the sawmill, I came back to a bunch of lumber and was able to upgrade myself, preparing me for the dangerous areas and fights ahead. Now, the bigger question is, if I could make machines that crafts better wood for me, is there another machine for metal? Starting this session off, I stumbled upon a junkyard for cars, which will be part of a bigger side quest later in this session. Soon after, I got a quest about some weird energy. Probably not important, let's ignore that. At this point in my playthrough, which was about 14 hours in, I felt very free and just wanted to explore more. I quickly found myself at Westcutter, a vital town which I didn't explore at all, and walked away 2 minutes later. Somebody please tell Daniel from the past to explore the whole thing and not move on after a few square feet? I quickly found the farm, and next to it, the link tower, which was broken. And it told me I needed titanium? A type of material I have never seen before. Now, this quest told me to go back to Westcutter to find the company Pike's Steel Manufacturing. Guess where that was? Literally one screen away from the campfire I was just at. I really want to punch my past self right now. Before I went back, I searched around the farm next to the link tower and quickly deleted the boss from the video game. Obviously, this was too good to be true, so I got quickly humbled by a stalker. Got me there, developers. When I looked over the map, I realized I had so much more to explore, so I adopted the strat that no one has ever done before in a video game. It's running past every enemy and ignoring them. Finally, at the company in Westcutter, I got the blueprint for the smelter. It's like the sawmill for lumber, but for steel and titanium. It felt like I found the last piece of the puzzle that would make everything else fit. Now I could smelt my heart away and make as much titanium as possible, which wasn't a lot, because I needed a lot of steel. It also took a lot of time, so I placed a bunch of machines at the same time and produced as much lumber and titanium while I was running around. While I was clicking around the UI, I noticed that I could make something from mana. This was the first time mana became a real-ish material. I had a lot of mana beads, but the game didn't really tell me or give me any indication so far why I really needed them. Now, knowing I can smelt some mana stuff, maybe I was slowly approaching the end game and mana becomes important. While the machines were humming, I upgraded my gear and noticed that quests gave a stupid amount of XP. Like, we're talking thousands compared to the 140 XP I get from stashing one material. Doing the quests would have been a smart thing to do, but remember that I have 2 whole brain cells. Continuing my journey, I found an obelisk and actually used it this time. Not like 10 hours ago at the beginning of the game when I didn't do anything with it. Another big brain move was doing the tower defense minigame manually by whacking the enemies with my weapon. In the end, I couldn't even go into the bunker because I needed a gas mask. It also looked like it was a major quest, so I tried to focus on it. After fixing the link tower with all the titanium I made, I quickly used deadly transmission. I actually have been using that every time I unlock the new link tower, so the enemies don't respawn and it's less of a hassle to move through the world. Next up was this quest for a hidden treasure under some trees. Kind of a neat way to flesh out the world, and of course I got a bunch of materials on top of that. Now for a much bigger side quest called Getaway Cut Short. This took quite some time, but here's the short version. I found car keys in a toilet. Ew. Looked for the car in the town that I went through earlier, then it said that I should look for that car in the nearby junkyard. And there, I found the katana. It is an optional weapon, so you might not even find it in your first playthrough if you don't explore. I used it much later on with some trinkets to have an easier time doing the more difficult obelisks. But in general, I stuck to charging up my attacks and hopefully one-shotting the enemies, because I still hate stalkers. Going back to Westcutter and stashing all the loot that has been smelting while I was gone, I continued further and discovered a bridge that was covered in gas. Now this was the second quest that hinted that I really should get that gas mask sooner than later if I wanted to continue the story. Technically, there was no story beside the myth tablets that I'll talk about later, but it felt like I moved through the world as the developers intended. You'll see that I may have skipped a boss or two. Using the other bridge that goes south, I enter the desert. Instantly overheating, the game told me to make a safari outfit. Cutting down some cacti and going back, I swiftly crafted the outfit and a rifle because why not? It's a slow weapon and doesn't deal huge damage, but it had by far the biggest range. Same with range weapons, you automatically get ammo when you rest at a campfire. For the last dozen minutes of this session, I explored the desert, found some recipes, but most importantly, a convoy and a very scary mutated hurler throwing 3 explosive projectiles. It's a powerful version of the enemy I fought before, but when I say powerful, I mean they would insta-kill me if I took all 3 projectiles in my face. Kind of makes sense, because it's some weird Nickelodeon green goop that explodes. Eventually, I did find the missing car and a mana shard, which wasn't a big surprise to me, because I was already making some mana shards from all the mana beads back at the smelter. And these were the highlights of my 4th session. I'm so glad I still had 1 fuel cell, and I needed 3 more. Focusing on quests? What's that? This session might be the most dense session, and I'm not talking about like shonen character dense. I'm talking about there is so much happening. So let's get started. My focus for this session was to find the gas mask because it seemed like a major item that I should get. Besides getting lost in a gigantic desert and doing a trial, I found a new enemy called the Ex-Human Leaper. Technically, it was part of the convoy earlier, but I wanted to mention it here again. The Ex-Human Leaper is indeed a very leapy boy. What the fuck? Further ahead, I found an expedition site. I was very happy finding some story and deeper lore instead of some short radio transmissions.
Testing. This is Judith Abigail Susan James, the Crown Archaeological Expedition.
So apparently the Crown Archaeological Expedition team was investigating something, and Judith Abigail Susan James, what a name, was in charge and left behind voice recordings, plus a huge hacking pyramid. But to enter it, I needed the gas mask, of course. Damn, did someone had Taco Bell? Before I pass out from the smell, I went straight to the jungle and battled my way through. I could have ran past most of the enemies, but, you know, some enemies, like the Ex-Human Chaser, really liked to run me over and slash my face. Fast forward, the jungle was huge and full of challenges. It was one of the rare moments in the game when I was finally happy seeing another campfire and knowing that I won't have to repeat all of it again if I died. After going through the jungle, I found a link tower and entered a temple with tomb guards. These enemies were no joke. After going through the temple, which was relatively small compared to the jungle, I encountered the old loyal champion. This was an incredibly intense boss fight that ended with both of us dying. Thankfully, the boss didn't respawn, even though I would have liked to try it one more time without dying. Out of the arena, I learned how to make a gas mask, but poor Susan didn't make it. In her last message, she talked about something they set free. I had a suspicion about what it was because of all the myth tablets that I have found so far, but I cut it out of the video because we will go over them later in the video. Getting back to Westcutter, I finished the quest and crafted the gas mask. After quickly tackling another trial, I equipped my new gas mask and crossed the bridge, which was very stinky. You know, just absolute Taco Bell behavior. After the bridge, I arrived at probably the most important location in the game, Central.
Message to all survivors, head for the Pioneers Park in middle of the city. We are able to provide shelter for you there.
Central was clearly some sort of metropolitan area where many people lived, but then turned into ex-humans. Feeling very powerful after some upgrades earlier, bam! A turret kills me. First weird zombies, and now even metal itself is out for blood. I return and destroy them with my grenades and my rifle. The reason why the rifle exists in this game is probably because of the turrets, but if you only have grenades, you can use them too, even though you will run out of them fairly quickly. Up ahead, I found a large park which was in the middle of Central, and it's clear that people tried to fight off the ex-humans. Visual storytelling on point once again. However, the people lost, and the building afterwards, which was the city hall, got overrun. After searching around, I found the City Hall key and was able to go behind the building. I quickly opened the gate and then checked what was behind the City Hall building. And what I found was a small skulker. Aw, how cute. Oh my god! Using everything in my arsenal, getting slapped in the face and nearly dying, I defeated them on my first try. Clearly, those were the bosses in Central, and the reward was a recipe to a new bonking weapon, the sledgehammer. The sledgehammer was insanely powerful compared to the bat, allowing me to destroy brick walls and collect bricks, a new type of material. I went back to my smelter, grabbed some titanium, upgraded my sledgehammer even more, and used a mana shard for the first time to upgrade an item. Now the sledgehammer dealt 80 blunt damage. Sorry, I mean bonking damage. Back at the start, the game told me that I needed more damage to break the cars in the first town, and after so many hours, I can finally dismantle them, because that's the name of the game. After gathering a lot of steel, which I really needed for titanium, I moved on to the next quest, which was the train in Central. I skipped over this earlier, but I found another train back in the desert and was a bit too lazy to figure out the quest. But not this time. Finding the train power unit in Central, I fixed it somehow, you know, the normal dude thing to do, I guess. Fixing a train on a Saturday morning, you know, don't worry about it. With a winter coat, fur hat, and hot water bottle equipped, I'm ready to conquer the North. It's difficult to put this scene into words, but after so many hours, this upcoming scene was just amazing. Enjoy. The game has more ambience than music, so having scenes like this really felt earned and were just great. now being far north in a completely new area and a new section of the map, I was quite happy having the sledgehammer fully upgraded because it made exploring much easier. To open the gate, I needed to check the Polaris gate key, which I totally didn't try to get by cheating and breaking a wall. Cut me some slack, there were turrets in the building that insta-killed me, okay? Now, I did the Polaris gate key much later, so we'll go over this in a later section of the video. The reason why I didn't do this quest right now was, you know, 2 brain cells, I forgot the quest, and then suddenly 6 hours went by. Also, I headed south, studying the map and trying to find a way back, since I couldn't use the train anymore. Eventually, I found Westport Harbor area and activated another link tower as well as a campfire. Quite cheeky from the developers, but if you are careful, you can cross the pipes to reach the other side. After battling many stalkers, I found the riot shield. I never really used it, but it was fun to find. Realizing that Westport is an ideal location for multiple sawmills and smelters, I set them up and later refocused on the northern part, aiming for the remaining link tower. The area was very different because there were ice platforms connecting to other ice platforms, and of course, some more stalkers. The link tower was probably the most difficult one to get, and also so far outside that I knew I would very rarely use it. Either way, I got it and saw that a fuel cell was further down on the map. Remember fuel cells? Yeah, me neither. I headed towards it and found a hydroelectric dam, but I needed to use the pumps to get the water out. Finding the key to use the pumps in a nearby town, the water disappears, and of course there was a robot. Gives me some big JoJo vibes right here. So here is a twist. Because if you have played this game before, or if you're one of the developers, you might be thinking, you're not actually going to fight this thing now, right? After taking several hits and trying to recover my health, I gradually wore it down. The sledgehammer ultimately defeated the sword. With the sword down, I secured the second fuel cell. There is most likely an order for defeating the robots. This one at the lake was probably the most dangerous of them all. I only realized this after having played more of the game and realizing how easy the other robots were compared to this one. My guess is that you actually should go in a clockwise order to defeat the robots. This made me realize how incredibly open this open world game truly is. So well done, developers, making the game this open. It's worth noting that I was roughly 23 hours into this playthrough and have only found 2 out of the 4 fuel cells. The next ones are going to be fairly easy, but still, 23 hours of playtime is incredibly rare for any indie game, and even more rare in some AAA games. Of course, this game doesn't have any deep customization, incredible storytelling and voice acting, or bombastic cutscenes, but because it's so gameplay focused and lets me explore however I want, I felt more connected to this game and its world than with many other games. To unwind, I decided to do some fishing and rewarded myself with some tasty omega-3 acids before taking a break after this 6-hour-long session. The ending was slowly approaching and I was almost able to hear the credits. Wait, what do you mean with there are 6 more sessions left? What the heck is happening? Rapid fire? Alright, I guess. Trial. A ghost deer appeared. Mana shard. Shoved the fuel cell into the fuel hole. Went to the bottom right of the map, which is something I should have done hours ago. Random boss called Ruthless Pitcher. Boom, gone. Another trial. Wowzers. Ermagerd, the next robot. Reaper. Easiest boss fight in my entire life. Boom, also gone. Fuel cell acquired. I started to wonder if there would be a plot twist coming soon. Probably not. What the fuck just happened? Let me gather myself, because this is the session in which I nearly finished the game, but something stopped me, and it pissed me off quite a bit. To give you some context, it has been 14 real-life days since I started this playthrough. Continuing my journey, I quickly found a trial that involved pushing some objects and positioning lasers. A lot of these trials remind me of The Legend of Zelda. Back at the desert, I stumbled upon the repair parts for the train at Diamond's mine. After fixing the train, I ventured into the bottom left part of the world, where the last fuel cell and the source of the strange energy awaited. There was also another cutscene with the sick music that I enjoyed previously when I went north. God damn, it's so good. To skip ahead a lot, I followed the train track backwards and found a side quest, did it, and was able to craft the desert helmet, which granted me more heat resistance. Following that, I knew the location of the nearby link tower, so I headed straight for it to enable fast travel and use deadly transmission. Around the corner, the final robot called the Crown of the Desert was waiting. The battle wasn't as challenging as the one in the lake, but it still required my focus, or else it would explode me in just a few missiles. I mean, I'm a human, so no wonder missiles hurt, right? With the robot defeated, I grabbed the fuel cell and continued exploring. I found a massive military base and discovered another trial. This trial was the most difficult yet, as one wrong move would force me to start over. As we all know, I have 2 brain cells, and this took way too long. Seriously, it hurts looking at it during the editing. It's seriously, what was wrong with me? Now for some backstory, I found some strange energy at the start of the game and then multiple times across the world. I also got the quest Strange Energy, which I was now following up on after dozens of hours. Fighting through the building was manageable, but still very tough against the many skulkers, even with a level 5 sledgehammer. In the heart of the building, I found a note explaining that the structure affected time and space. Using a wristwatch, I could mitigate some of the effects. After crafting and equipping the digital wristwatch, I was teleported around the world, fighting off enemies before returning and crafting the Rift toolkit. Having a little bit of a downtime again after all this fighting and teleporting, I realized something felt different. I then read what the digital wristwatch was actually doing, and it clicked. Or you could say it ticked. Get it? Because it's a clock. Okay, I'm sorry. This is the best trinket in the entire game for me. I love going fast in games, but it should be earned. The digital wristwatch increased the speed of my character by 30%. Everything I did was now faster, meaning attacking enemies and dismantling things, which the whole game is about, has now been upgraded. But there is a twist. This also affects enemies, So now they are also 30% faster. So fast enemies before are now really fast. This is such a cool trinket with a dangerous downside, but it was totally worth it. Because exploring and running around was so much more fun with this trinket. Going back to the Rift toolkit, it enabled me to open rifts that teleported me to otherwise inaccessible locations in the game. And one such location is the box on the hill that appeared at the beginning of the game. This type of game design, where progress is blocked until certain upgrades are acquired, reminds me of Super Metroid. Kudos to the developers for implementing this and making the world feel more exciting. Now, with the last fuel cell in my inventory, I had to know if there is a plot twist or if this was truly the end. If it was the end, I thought that I could continue playing with the save file, similar to most games when you beat the final boss. Now, if you look really close on the map, there is a big part unexplored. Not because I didn't want to, but because there was no way to get to it. Until this. So yes, there was a plot twist. The rocket teleported away and the underground east entrance opened. This entrance is near the diner, which was near the area I was at when I finally got to the lumber company. I don't know if you remember this from 4 sessions ago or something. The underground east entrance is also more or less at the center of the island. Interesting world design by teasing the player by constantly having a fog of war on the map. After some crafting and waiting for mana chunk, I searched for the underground entrance. Along the way, I found an easy trial and a small military base. Inside the base was the Ark. I have been teasing this part at the very start of the video. I planted vegetables which I thought I would need for recipes later, or maybe something else that may require me to have 100 tomatoes for no specific reason whatsoever. I actually didn't even think this thing would be in the game when I first found it. So for any completionists out there, here is your wet dream.
Let there be light. As I have foreseen, the world is about to end in -999 days. The flood is coming. But thanks to our hard-working volunteers, we are preserving the world as we know it. Sample by sample, we are filling the archives with remnants of our time. The task is colossal, but we will achieve it. Welcome to the Ark.
The Ark consists of multiple collections, each requiring a specific number of materials to be deposited. I realized I should have been more conservative with my materials, like not turning all the iron into steel and titanium. We will get back to this in the next sessions, because I did finish the Ark. More or less. Moving on from this, I decided to explore all the unexplored areas. In doing so, I finally dared to go to the link tower above the train I used earlier. Even though I was slowly freezing, I managed to just use the link tower without any issues. Moving on, I found an easy trial and obtained the Polaris gate key, the one that the general had. Using the key, I went through the gate and discovered another secret government or military base. I started to see a pattern emerging with bases at the top left and bottom left of the map. I crafted the old pocket watch, which slowed down everyone's movement by 25%. It could have been helpful in boss fights, but I preferred being faster. Gotta go fast, you know, Sanic? Now it's time to focus back on the main quest, which was the underground entrance. To keep things moving quickly, let me summarize. The underground area was quite big, with a few paths and a ton of enemies, but I fought my way through, went all the way around, and finally reached the crown entrance. The mission update simply said, go to the escape pod. After numerous enemies and turrets, I reached the fortress entrance and got very worried that I might die soon and must replay everything. Thankfully, I located the link tower, used it, and opened the gates to the fortress. With deadly transmission now active, all the enemies were back, so after some more fighting, I eventually found the launch pad key, and after a bit of back and forth, completed another easy trial. Inside the fortress, I discovered a chest containing mana chunks and shards, which seemed to be the game's way of helping me progress. Deep in the fortress, I found my final myth tablet, which was probably the darkest one. I will go over every myth tablet soon. After finding all the myth tablets, a cutscene showed a rift opening next to the pyramid. I went to the pyramid, opened the rift, and found myself in a scorching hot area. I quickly changed my outfit, lit a campfire, and checked the map. I was now on the far left side of the map, on an island with a base built around a volcano. I couldn't help but wonder if I would have to escape down the side of the volcano with lava chasing me at some point. Is this going to be some Metroid escape sequence with a big ass timer in the corner? I mean, I wouldn't mind, to be honest. To avoid making this video even longer than it already is, the volcano area was decent. It wasn't the best part of the game, but the varied sections and elevations made exploring a bit challenging than usual. At the top of the volcano, I found a trial that I definitely didn't cheat on. Nope. Totally not. Returning to the launch pad, I decided to see what would happen if I tried to enter. As it turned out, the noise and preparation of the rocket caused the enemies in the bunker to go berserk, and they would storm the rocket and destroy it, unless I defeated all of them. Remember when I said this earlier in the video? Even if bunkers have materials in them, I probably wouldn't need to do them. Right? Well, it turned out that the tower defense minigame isn't mini after all, and actually quite mandatory to finish the game. I was not happy about this, and I had to take a moment to collect myself. Despite having the best gear, I couldn't complete the game because I ignored the bunker stuff. I found the choice a bit odd, as I expected to fight a large enemy or multiple big enemies. However, I can assure you that it's much easier if you complete all the other bunkers first. Realizing that each bunker that I visited gave me a CPU meant that if I find all the bunkers in the world, I could craft many more turrets and maybe win this final challenge to finish the game. To wrap up on a positive note, I managed to complete a bunker in Central using just 2 turrets and some sandbags to block the enemies. How did I do that now? Well, I was playing an aggressive DPS focused build and using a fully upgraded katana, which can hit multiple enemies with one swing. Rocket launchers are also OP as heck, and I'm a dumbass for not using them the entire time. Frick me, I guess. Hey, if you watched until now, I hope you drank some water. Stay hydrated, gamers. And don't forget to dismantle that subscribe button! Knowing that I needed a lot of turrets, my focus was on hunting down all the bunkers on the island. The way I found bunkers was by slowly scanning the map, and if you look extremely closely, you can notice big open areas that usually relate to a tower defense location. Beside that, I also kept my eyes open for the last 2 out of 20 trials. Earlier I mentioned that you get 1 CPU for finding the bunker, but you also find another CPU inside the bunker as a reward on top of materials and even recipes sometimes. That means if you beat 4 bunkers, you would have 8 CPUs and thus can craft 8 machine gun turrets, or, as we now know, 4 rocket turrets, which are OP AF. So after just a few bunkers, I felt nearly unbeatable and was kind of relaxing seeing my turrets annihilate a ton of enemies. After finishing my 19th trial, I found the last one by using the Rift toolkit. With all 20 trials done, I proceeded to the pyramid. Inside, I found the burial chamber of the Immortal King. I know I haven't mentioned him at all until now, and you're probably thinking, Immortal who? Don't worry, we'll get to it soon. I think I've said this now 16 times. Trust me, we will get to this soon. Just one more session after this. Even though this was his burial chamber, the Immortal King wasn't in his tomb. Instead, in another room, I discovered a new weapon, the Kopesh. I hope I'm saying this right. So this was the most powerful slashing weapon, and it took a lot of high-tier materials to craft. It deals impressive damage and is perfect for taking down tanky foes and also just demolishing a ton of objects. I mean, look at this. Waving my sledgehammer around looks like a joke at this point. So satisfying. Having this weapon as a reward for completing all 20 trials was a fantastic decision by the developers. It is a bit overpowered, but, you know, I don't mind. Now, armed with the Kopesh and having completed many more bunkers, it's time to tackle the final mission and protect the rocket so I can leave the island. Alright, here they come. Hello? I guess having a bunch of rocket turrets is quite good. Well, with the enemies defeated and the rocket ready, it was time to leave the island after a playtime of 35 hours. This game has been an absolute joy from start to finish. Yes, there were some bumps along the way, but no game is perfect. It may not be as complex or visually stunning as other games, but it has its own charm by being very simple, and it was fun to uncover the world one broken toilet at a time. I genuinely hope the developers got enough money and can create more games like this in the future. Now, ignoring that I murdered so many trees, you might think the video is over.
But there's still one major quest left.
The Ark.
The Ark is almost complete. Please carry on the good work.
To be honest here, I didn't fully complete the Ark, but hear me out and let me explain. After playing a few more sessions, spending another 7 hours, mostly farming stuff, I completed the first level of the Ark.
I want to remind all our volunteers that there will be an after party. It will be held at level 2 when the Ark is complete. It will be quite something.
Yes, you heard right. The first level.
The Ark is now complete. Thank you all our volunteers. The after party will be held at Ark level 2. There will be cocktail snacks and beverages, and a live band playing my favorite song. I made it myself.
On the next floor, you find a map with blinking lights. These blinking lights are all the link towers. To finish the second floor of the Ark, I would have to kill every monster on the entire map and then use Ascension at the link tower, which I showed previously. But if I'm correct, I think after using Ascension, you have to then kill every single monster again, which has now a power boost and is stronger, and you have to do this for every single region on the entire map. This was not so interesting to me, so I never finished it. I may have done it if I had even more speed to run through the world, because damage wasn't the issue anymore. And if you're thinking, wait, was this everything? Like, don't you get anything for completing the first arc? If you remember, at the literal start of the video, I mentioned slashing weapons and bonking weapons. The Kopesh is a slashing weapon, you know, a sword. But what's the bonking version of it? Well, that is the Power Fist, the strongest weapon in the game, dealing blunt damage. Or, sorry, bonking damage. It's as crazy as you might think. You're literally breaking down brick walls in seconds. And on top of that, you also have the wristwatch making it 30% faster. It's a beautiful thing. I love that this game has these super strong, overpowered things. I'm just a tiny little bit sad that there isn't really anything to use it on. Maybe there is something in the DLCs, but I haven't played those, and those are also not part of this video. Now, this was the end of my playtime with Dismantle, but it wasn't the end of thinking about it. The more I played other games in the past year, the more I realized how good Dismantle was for an indie game. One major part of why Dismantle stuck with me was the world building. A world that is believable is sometimes more important than a story and a bunch of cutscenes. Obviously, there are limits because time and money are a thing. With time constraints, you might not be able to create a few models of multiple characters, write a lot of backstory and lore to flesh out the world. So, what do? You can have a single character, the main protagonist, and let the player explore the world. The player can then find out by themselves if they are truly the last person on this island. It gives the world mystery, but also turns it into gameplay because you are the one controlling the main protagonist. In Dismantle, you can go wherever you want right after the initial intro scene. For example, I went to the more difficult robot in the lake and not the easier one at the bottom right. And the second limit is money. More NPCs and characters usually mean some type of voice acting if you aren't going for an Animal Crossing type voiceover or synthesizer. If you have voice actors, you need money. Dismantle had voice acting at the start before you come out of the bunker, the myth tablets, and some audio logs you find later, but they had text-to-speech for the many radio transmissions. This might seem cheap, but you uncover in the game why that is the case. The Immortal King, which I'll talk about in the next section of the video, recorded 5 audio logs which you can listen to. All 5 are fully voice acted, and they are quite long.
Personal audio log about reminders. During my refuge, I will lose grip of reality. I need to find a way to remind myself of what's important. Something I can't destroy even when my mind goes to dark places. Something I can't reach until I've regained myself. The latest iteration of the voice synth is good enough. The automated broadcasts will start immediately.
He made the speech synthesizer, so that is an in-game reason why it exists. The king broadcasted these automated messages over the island. This is a simple and believable reason which fleshes out the world of Dismantle and also won't burn a hole into the developer's bank accounts. Speaking of the synthesizer, the radio transmissions are quite varied. I won't play them here or else this video will never stop, but I prefer storytelling and world building like the radio more than cutscenes. Most cutscenes take control away and pull me out of the game instead of more into it. And radio transmissions were short, so you never really stuck around for too long in the same building listening to them. They probably chose the synthesizer because of budget reasons, but I think it works great. To get back to the overarching topic of world building, I prefer gameplay over story and visuals. But weirdly enough, a game without any story or world building also feels weird. Thankfully, Dismantle has a really nice balance between gameplay, well, mostly gameplay, and world building, as well as a little bit of story sprinkled in. And somehow, the game tells a pretty decent story while keeping the player in a constant gameplay loop. It's kind of fascinating. The myth tablets are, well, tablets or slabs of stone that light up when you get close. They are very noticeable and clearly look magical to entice the player to get closer. They do pull you out of the game for a few seconds, but offer you a different perspective of the world that you're playing in. On top of that, as mentioned earlier, there's voice acting, and it tells the story of an ancient tribe, the people that lived on the island many years ago, and the one-armed king. If you are still watching this video and still haven't played the game, I highly recommend skipping this part, because finding these myth tablets between your crafting, cooking, and dismantling sessions really adds to the overall game experience. But if you really want to know, let me tell you about the story that was on the 10 myth tablets that were scattered across the entire map. The first one tells a tale about a great blue tear that dropped from the sky. Clearly, a meteor struck the island and introduced mana to this world. Then, some angelic-like being came from the sky who only had one arm, and the tribe accepted him. He introduced them to mana and how to use it. But the one-armed king was the only one who was able to do sorcery without mana. For whatever reason, he never taught people how to do that. After 1,000 years, the tribe flourished, when suddenly the pestilence affected everyone, besides the one-armed king. The pestilence is being shown as a big skull, and probably is some kind of disease. The wise elders confronted the king and accused him of doing this. The elders weren't believing his lies and sentenced him to death. They then just yeeted him into the deepest pit of the island. Surprise! When they returned to the camp, he was already there and waiting. I guess he just teleported himself out of danger like Goku from Dragon Ball. The one-armed king then told the elders that he would forgive them. The wise elders obviously didn't believe him, built a tomb in the Great Pyramid and locked him in so he may never cause harm. His screams echoed through the silent nights, but there was one last thing to do. They sent every woman and child descendant into the sea, and thus banishing them off the island. Every male descendant was buried alive, so now we can assume what or who those tomb guards really are. Remember when we had fun breaking stuff and building things? Yeah, shit got real. That is why I wanted you to uncover this by yourself, because it takes many hours between each myth tablet on your first playthrough, if you can even find all of them. The story starts off kind of interesting and you may think, oh cool, mana and some guy teaching them, but it quickly turned into lies, betrayal, and ultimately death. It's obviously not a deep story, but it's another part of this game that just works. It doesn't waste your time with a bunch of dialogue or long cutscenes. It also breaks up the gameplay of, well, breaking stuff all the time. Now, this was the story of the one-armed king, or the Immortal King. But to be honest here, I actually lied to you. Earlier, I skipped something after the credits.
So I escaped and left everything behind. Again. There was the accident, of course. Something wrong with the escape pod thruster. I lost my arm, but that was only the beginning.
I did run out of time.
We are now a one-armed guy. I see what you did there, developers. Okay, I'm milking this now. Let's end the video. To summarize all of it, Dismantle is an incredibly dense open-world game that allows you to progress in different ways, with a story that turned out to be much deeper and darker than I first believed. Even if the game looks very simplistic, it allows for a variety of playstyles and experimentation with trinkets and outfits, making the gameplay deeper. In addition to all of this, it kept the gameplay loop going for the majority of my 40-hour playthrough by using visual storytelling. It thankfully doesn't throw dozens of cutscenes at you like some other games. Now, with all of this, it may have taken me 12,500 words to say, game good, play it. Thank you so much for watching this video. I'm Daniel, and if you want to see more videos like this in the future, subscribe. I'm tearing up right now, I'm so fucking weird. Have a great rest of your day. Until next time.